Hello, everybody. This is Hannah T. Very grateful member of the Al-Anon family groups. And today I'd like to describe what it was like and then concentrate on steps 2, 3, and 11, describing the journey with my higher power. So I remember as early as 4 years old, I was going into bars, looking for Dad. That was a nightly thing of going into bars to look for him, to bring him home for dinner. And I remember the lights, the noise, how small I was and how big everything else was around me. And then as we got older, I remember getting into the car with Mom and my brother and sister, and we'd have to drive to another town to look for Dad. He would be at a bar. And I remember specifically Mom driving up and down the rows of cars at a Kmart parking lot, found his car because the bar was across the intersection. So this was kind of a pattern of Dad would park in a different place trying to hide from Mom, and Mom would always find him. So he would switch bars, and then she'd find him, and then he'd kind of go back. And, it was always this cat and mouse thing every night. And we always had to go find him so we could have him come home for dinner. We never really had dinner without him, so we always had to find him first, bring him home for dinner. And sometimes we would eat dinner like 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And then I remember as we got older, Mom did not drive anymore to go look for him, but she would sit by the phone with the phone book and call different bars and constantly ask each bar owner, is there an Oriental gentleman there? And she would always find him. She would always find him. And, given that we were living in Minnesota, it's very hard to camouflage if you're an Asian male. So it was very easy to say, is there an Oriental gentleman here, and they would be like, yep, yes, he's here, because, it's only one Oriental gentleman in the state of Minnesota. So he could not hide very well. But what I kind of took away from that is I was conscious of how Mom would go to great lengths and she would always succeed. Like, she was so persistent, so tenacious. She could always find him. And this was old school before technology. There was no internet. There was no Google Maps or GPS tracking. This is with a phone book and a map. And she would succeed at finding him every single time, no matter how hard he tried to hide his tracks. So it is, I saw firsthand that her tenacity, searching, manipulating, and forcing solutions always ended in success. So, and then I also remember drinking beer with Dad and watching boxing. I didn't think anything of it. I was just drinking some of his beer with him, but then I assume that maybe he got busted because all of a sudden there was no more alcohol in the home. I have to guess that my mom made that rule. And so if Dad wanted to drink, his MO would be to pick a fight. So he could storm out and then go drink somewhere at a bar or something. And, Dad was an angry person, whether he was drinking or not. So I don't know if he didn't drink at all, the results would be the same. Just because he was a violent person, he was very rageful, and we lived in fear. That's how he acted out. Mom was very much more passive aggressive. And so for me, I was the oldest daughter. And for me, I really internalized my pain. I tried to stay invisible. I was walking on eggshells all the time. I would often hide in my closet or hide under the bed. Or I would try to perform to get positive attention. Didn't really work. So then my brother, he really was the one who faced a lot of pressure. He was the son that Mom always wanted, and so there was a lot of pressure on him. He went to private schools very early. He was allowed to have 2 professions, a doctor or a lawyer. And in the 7th grade, he realized he couldn't really handle the sight of blood, so he's a lawyer today. He works very hard. I would consider saying that he is a workaholic. Now, my sister, she was the middle child. Her name was Hope. She acted out. She raged. She ran away from home. She vandalized property. She smoked cigarettes. She shoplifted. She drank. Getting in a lot of trouble. And so she received the most beatings. She couldn't be controlled, really. And then she reported to our assistant principal at our junior high school that Dad was beating her. And there was no CPS at that time, so our assistant principal called up my dad and said, "Stop that. Stop hitting your child." And of course, that made things a lot worse at home. So then my sister was then put into a reform school kind of place, like a disciplinary private school, tried to straighten her out that way. Then they put her into counseling. Of course, the counselor knew that this is a family issue, not just one person in the family. So he suggested that we all join family counseling, which I really resisted. I really didn't want to do this. This was a waste of our time. I don't want to sit with my family and talk. I mean, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of resistance. Mom would tell us what to say to the counselor. I just was very shut down, not cooperative at all. Then when my sister turned 16, she took her life. And what's kind of really sad is that her name was Hope. So literally, Hope died in our family. And, for my mom, who was always managing the image of our family, trying to uphold an image despite Dad's rages and getting drunk and going out there and hanging out at bars, it was like, okay, how do we manage this thing with a a daughter who had committed suicide. So there was a lot of blame thrown around. There was blame that was thrown at the music groups that she liked. She was really into the Sex Pistols and U2 at the time. My mom threw some blame at them, at the principal of her school, me, because I wasn't a good big sister. She just lashed out. And then what was told to everybody was, we don't know why she took her life. She was such a happy child, which is completely wrong. I mean, everyone could see that. She was always in trouble and vandalizing and shoplifting and running away from home. So, but that was the story. That's just the story we're sticking with. So, my relatives in Hong Kong offered our family to come visit, get away, come back here and get your mind off of it. And my parents agreed, as long as you do not ask any questions about hope. And so we went to Hong Kong the next year. And so my aunties got me trapped in a taxi cab, and that's when they interrogated me and said, well, why'd she do that, and what was going on? And I had my whole parroted line that we say, and I would say, we don't know why. She was such a happy child, and left it at that. But really, how I felt about her suicide is I was angry. I was very angry because she did it first. I was also suicidal at that time. She beat me to the punch. She got to escape. And I'm left to deal with this hell that I'm in, she's free from the depression and the anger and the sadness and the environment. And I was really upset about that. And I thought, well, I can't do it. I can't follow in her footsteps because I couldn't let my brother go through that again and then leave him all alone. So I don't know, maybe there's some survivor's guilt going on in there. Then I was at NAU in Flagstaff, Arizona for my college. And at one point my dad said to me, you need to come back to Minnesota. The family needs you. I didn't answer him, but inside I was like, oh, hell no, I'm not going back there. Hope escaped. I finally escaped. My only hope to escape was to wait till I'm 18 and can get out of the house. So I was like, no, I'm not going back there. So, I am glad that I did not go back to Minnesota. Even if, maybe Dad was trying to guilt me or he just really believed that, you need to come, this is what you do. You give up your life and you come back and support the family. I knew I was no good to do that. I was in no position to help with anything. So anyway, at this point, I'd like to concentrate on the journey to find my higher power. And when we were growing up, there was no religious upbringing. We didn't go to church. Nothing was talked about as far as God. And everyone around us in our small town in Minnesota, everyone would go to church on Sunday. It's like, our neighborhood would just turn into a ghost town for a couple hours every Sunday, and we're the only family at home. Um, and it was mostly, there was a Catholic church in town, there was a Lutheran church in town, there was a very small Jehovah's Witness church in town. So anyway, the neighbor boy said to me when we were kids, he had said, well, your family's going to hell because you're not baptized. And I was stunned. Like, I was so scared that he was right. Maybe that's why our home is so crazy and so chaotic and insane. So I decided to then, well, I guess I have to find my religion on my own. So I used to watch a lot of the televangelists, and in the 70s, they were a whole bunch of them on TV every Sunday. So I would watch them, I would listen, I would send for their things that they would sell. I donated my allowance to the televangelists. And I found out later that Mom intercepted my donations and pocketed the money. And I'm like, what? Now we can't get into heaven. What are you doing? That's probably why. Nothing's improving in our family. So I felt unloved by God. Like nothing's changing. Home is still horrible. It's not improving. And then when I became old enough to drive, I would drive myself to the Catholic church in town or to the Lutheran church in town, and I would attend services, and I would read books, and I'd learn the songs that they were singing. I'm kneeling, I'm standing, I'm sitting, I'm kneeling, and, and this is the way I approached God, just like my parents, bosses, teachers, boyfriends, friends. Number one, try to buy their love. Two, maybe I perform well, get rewarded. I was a people pleaser. Or I'd become a chameleon. Like, what do you want me to be? I'll be that. I will transform myself so you will love me. But then again, nothing changed. So I would curse God with hate. Then I would become victim. I would become the victim, and I would have self-pity, and I would see God as a perpetrator that was out to torture me. And then after some time passed, I'd try again, buy love, perform well, become a chameleon, try to win over, God's good favor. And my life was still not fun, it was just full of sadness, depression, anger. And so I'd curse God with hate again. And when I came into Al-Anon as a newcomer, I heard a longtime member express the same thing that she felt when she came in. She felt like God was out to get her, just waiting all the time to just blast her. And I was so shocked that someone actually had the same thoughts that I had. I couldn't believe it. And I, jokingly say that, how could God have been torturing you when he was spending all his time torturing me? He's got some good time management and multitasking skills. But that just shows the arrogance, the arrogance that, it's all about me. So much is focused on me. And I learned that in the program. So when it comes to steps 2 and 3, 2 came to believe that a power greater than me could restore me to sanity. And step 3 made a decision to turn my will and my life over to God as I understood God. I chose a sponsor who had a strong faith. And when I did work steps 2 and 3 with her, it was very difficult to, really uh, accept this, you know, that there could be a higher power for me that restores me to sanity. And I remember having the conversation with her about gender, and my sponsor asked me, how do you feel about a he for a god, a male gendered god? And I thought, oh, no, I don't want a male god. All the males in my life have used me, abused me, betrayed me, lied to me. I don't like men. I don't want a male god. And she had said to me, well, how do you feel about a female god? And I'm like, oh, no way. I hate women more than men. So I was really stuck there. And then I remember hearing people in the meetings talk about the group being a higher power. The collective mind is a power greater than my own individual limited mind. I remember a member talking about she had to rely on the lyrics of David Bowie songs because the lyrics from David Bowie songs made her feel calm, serene. There was a peace, a power there. And so that's what some people have shared that they had to start with as far as a power greater than themselves. I also heard that you could fire the old God or the old concept of God and hire a new one. And I thought, wow, that is profound. That's profound. I remember I was a chairperson for the entertainment committee of our state convention, and I wrote these vignettes for the skit. And one of the vignettes was holding a job interview for a higher power, and going through the actual job interview process and asking pointed questions. What we're looking for in a higher power is blank. And do you have these qualities and so forth? And if you do, you're hired. Anyway, I had to start with the qualities of my dogs. I had 2 dogs. I had a male dog. I had a female dog. And, their qualities included unconditional love, loyalty, comforting, funny, a source of joy. And these are the qualities that I could start to build a God of my understanding. This is what I want my higher power to have, are those qualities. So as a newcomer, I had my, what I felt was my first lightning bolt, burning bush, higher power, spiritual experience. When I was little, I had a teddy bear that I just loved. Carried it around everywhere. It's half bald because of all the hair, missing an eye. And it was a teddy bear that was a gift from my aunt when she visited Australia. So it's a very unique teddy bear. Not one that you can find in America, but it's pretty realistic. And it was just, I loved that bear. It was my favorite animal. And all of a sudden it was, after some years, it was gone. It just disappeared and I could never find it. And it always was this source of pain for me all the way into my adulthood. And I could not understand it. I just had no closure. So at the time, I concluded, I don't know if it's true, but I concluded that Mom was the culprit. She was not a fan of toys or animals. Any stuffed animals or things like that were always gifts from relatives or family friends. But, she didn't care for that kind of stuff. So I had a lot of grief, a lot of bitterness, but a lot of shame. And I would shame myself. I go, why am I feeling this way? I'm a grown-up. That's just baby stuff. Let it go. Stop being so immature. And, of course, you can't tell anyone because what will they think of me? So I just held it inside. I did tell a therapist about the grief that I had and the pain that I had. I did tell my sponsor when I started to work with her as a newcomer. And, I thought, the only way that I can ever get this bear back in my life is I would have to go to Australia someday. Or if I knew anyone that was going to Australia, I would ask them, please get a teddy bear. It looks like this. I will pay you back. So that was the fantasy. Anyway, I visited my sponsor's house one day, and I saw the bear, this very bear. I saw it at her house. I mean, it was in much better shape, had hair. It only had one eye, too, but, it was not as worn as my original bear. So she was very surprised, like, oh, really? And a week later, she gave me the bear. And we both cried. It meant so much. There was a lot of healing that just happened right in that moment that I can't describe, but it was a miracle to me. And then especially when she told me the story. And the story goes like this. This bear belonged to her husband. It was given to him years and years ago by his first wife when she visited Australia. He didn't really care for it. There was no attachment to it, but he always felt all these years that it was too nice to donate to a secondhand store. So he just kept it, just sat in his office for years until I saw it and my sponsor told him about my story and asked her husband, would it be okay to give Hannah your bear? And he said yes. And it was really a miracle that how I came to have this bear back in my life and the feeling of restoration that happened. And then the story. I've had many more spiritual experiences like that lightning bolt, burning bush experience. And then also the spiritual awakenings that we talk about in the program, where the fog slowly lifts over time and I get clarity. So that is the very first memory I have of a real lightning bolt experience as a newcomer in Al-Anon regarding my higher power. So the concepts that I've learned in Al-Anon regarding a higher power have been just miraculous. One of the things I learned was knowing about God versus knowing God. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with the child actor Ricky Schroeder. I was part of his fan club. I would get his newsletter. I'd get all the little things like, with his logo on it. I had posters of him. I had the Tiger Beat magazines. I knew everything about him. His birthday, his favorite color, where he was born, his mom and dad's name. I knew everything about this celebrity. And he doesn't know who the heck I am. I've never talked to the guy, never met the guy. He doesn't know me from anybody. And that is the difference. I know a lot about him, but I don't know him. And the same thing with God. I tried to gain all this information about God, but I did not have a relationship with God. So and I didn't really know the difference, or is not conscious of it. So now, because of step 11, having conscious contact with God, I can start to develop a relationship. You know, my brother always threatens I'm going to tell all your friends that you were in the Ricky Schroeder fan club. I'm like, everyone knows anyway. You know? I still have my childhood friends who still send me articles if he pops up in celebrity news now. You know, it's no secret, and it doesn't bother me. So anyway, so with step 3, we get to have a higher power of our own understanding. And that is just huge. You know, just like I said before, I can fire the old concept of God and hire a new one. What I also learned in program is that we all have our own higher power, which was profound for me. You know, I can be his only child and his favorite child. I've never been that. So it's just, what a gift. Because my distorted thinking was so caught up in, you know, there's no time for me. I'm just a number in God's, you know, mind, in his world. There's so many other people that need way more help than I do. He doesn't have time. But this concept that we all have our own higher power, where I can be God's only child, I can be God's favorite child, and so the qualities that I started off with, that I got from my dogs, that has evolved. So present day, the image that I like to have is this bear. You know, bear maybe wearing some traditional dress or some tribal wear or something like that. Very Yoda-like, you know, small but old, wise, slow. Yes, my higher power is slow. I am very impatient. God's timing is not my timing. And my God is very funny, just like Yoda from Star Wars. But my higher power can also, you know, kick some ass with a lightsaber. You know, you're ready to throw down if need be. Some tough love, you know. So very versatile. I love the concept of my higher power. Another gift that the program gave me was that God wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. And God has my best interest at heart. You know, this is so different. This is so different because, you know, before it was like, God wants you to be a good girl. God wants you to pray every night. You know, God wants me to do things I don't want to do. And here I get to have this concept that God wants me to be happy. God wants me to be loved. God has my best interest at heart. So, on to step 11, regarding the conscious contact with God. You know, I used to carry around this book of prayers. And there's these long prayers. There were prayers for everything. Prayers for money, prayers for workplace, prayers for family, prayers for relationships. And my one that I recited a lot was prayer for unrequited love. You know, oh my God, I prayed that prayer so much. And I was still in that belief that if I pray just right, I say the right words. Again, back to the I have to perform well so I can get rewarded. And this was before programs, so I carried this prayer book everywhere and I'd say these prayers. I mean, it took a long time. These were long prayers and, there were prayers for everything. So it didn't work. That's not the same as what we talk about in step 11 about conscious contact, because step 11 talks about developing the trust. When I talk to my friends, I don't go reciting prayers at them. We have a real connection and interaction, mutually beneficial conversation of listening and communicating and validating and understanding. And that's the way that I choose to relate to God today. Al-Anon has a great piece of literature that has helped me so much in my journey to find my higher power. It's Al-Anon's book called As We Understood, which are members sharing experience, strength, and hope regarding their higher power. My favorite quote from that book comes from page 91 and says, "God brought me to Al-Anon to find him." That's where I found my higher power. Anyway, I will close with this. I was in a meeting where the topic was, how do you connect with your higher power? And, a lot of people talk about how they connect with God in nature. And I was like, nah, not me. Don't care for that. Bugs, snakes. Nah, I'm not one for, nature. I always say, I find my God in humor, in laughing, in having a good time. And that is true, I do, but it has expanded. Now I can appreciate nature much more. And I can feel, God's presence. But, it's expanded. I can connect with my higher power just about with anything. I hear God in bumper stickers or billboards or TV shows. But most of all, I hear the voice of God through people in the meetings when they share their experience, strength, and hope. So thank you, everyone, for letting me share on today's topic of steps 2, 3, and 11, my journey to find my higher power.